All right, it's really clear the 49ers have a problem finishing games. That was the topic today at the team facility. Kyle Shanahan, Nick Bosa, George Kittle all alluded to the 49ers possibly being 8-2. They were a little bit better on a few plays per game, and most of the troublesome plays have come in the fourth quarter of games. So I decided to delve into it because this right here is one of the great mysteries of the 2024 season. I added records to the chart that I show you guys a lot. So team records right underneath the 49ers logo, right underneath the Chiefs logo. San Francisco playing Green Bay, their records right to the right. 49ers and the Packers are in a similar tier of efficiency when you look at offense and defense. But the Packers are 7-3 and the 49ers are 5-5. So you want to be further to the right and further up in this chart. The Lions are 9-1. The Bills are 8-2. All the elite teams, I would say you could put the Lions and the Bills in that category safely. The Philadelphia Eagles are creeping into that territory. Those teams are 9-1 or 8-2. The teams in this second/third tier, those guys are all either 8-2, 7-3, 9-1 in the Chiefs' case, 7-3 for Green Bay, 7-4 for Washington. They're all in that winning record territory, except for the 49ers, who are 5-5. So the 49ers are efficiency outliers in that they've been much better in terms of EPA per play, and DVOA is even better. They'd be in the upper right in terms of DVOA, which is adjusted for opponent, but they still only have that 500 record. They have the type of record that you would expect to see out of an efficiency profile here in the middle. Teams like the Broncos, the Rams, the Falcons, even the Arizona Cardinals a little bit better than the 49ers. They're a tier below. So the 49ers aren't as good because they just haven't finished the job in these games. I mean, point blank, they've got they've built 3 leads that they've blown against NFC West teams in the fourth quarter. So the fourth quarter has been especially bad for San Francisco. Today up on the San Francisco Standard, I wrote all about this. The 49ers struggles to the finish. Is the offense or the defense to blame? People like to look at this on a week-by-week basis, which is the wrong way to look at it because you're going to get stuck in one-game sample sizes instead of looking at the big picture. So the flavor of the moment is, well, the 49ers offense is to blame because they only scored 17 points against the Seattle Seahawks. And yes, in that game, I would put more of the blame on the 49ers offense. They hung that defense out to dry, especially considering the fact that Nick Bosa got hurt in that game and the defense fell apart without Nick Bosa. But I think it's really important to look at a larger sample of things. And we can look at the EPA splits. This is expected points added of both the 49ers offense and the defense per quarter. So why don't we start with the offense? 49ers offense ranks as the number 7 unit in the league in the first quarter. They falter in the second quarter down to number 16, but they improve again in the third quarter at number 11, and they actually have their highest ranking in the fourth quarter, number 6. So the 49ers offense did not finish the game against the Seattle Seahawks particularly impressively. I would say that Brock Purdy missed a chance to seal the game when he threw high to Deebo Samuel on the dig route. But he also did some good stuff in the fourth quarter, and he's done some good stuff in fourth quarters across this season to the point where the 49ers rank number 6 in efficiency over the fourth quarter. Now, watch the defense. I'm going to switch this now to the 49ers defense. This is the defensive EPA per quarter. They start out great, number 4. Top 5 defense in the first quarter. They're solid in the second quarter as well, number 7. Then it starts to really erode by the third quarter, number 13. And then it falls off of a cliff by the fourth quarter, number 28. Now, there was an extenuating circumstance on Sunday, and I've already talked about it. It was Nick Bosa getting hurt in the second half. The most staggering stat of the game is that with Nick Bosa on the field, the 49ers allowed only 3.3 yards per play, which is airtight, and they didn't give up a single touchdown. When Nick Bosa was off the field, which was most of the second half, 6.1 yards per play for Seattle, which is terrible for a defense, and 2 touchdowns scored, including the game winner for the Seahawks. So the 49ers didn't have their best player defensively. They obviously wore down. They were obviously fatigued as that game progressed, and it led to yet another bad fourth quarter for the defense. That being said, the 49ers defense ranked number 28 even before last week. This wasn't just a one-time thing where the 49ers defense slipped. They have run into walls late in games very, very frequently this season. I think back to the 49ers' first loss against the Minnesota Vikings, where the defense could not get off the field on third down. That prevented the 49ers from notching a comeback against the Minnesota Vikings. I go to the game against the Los Angeles Rams, where they couldn't get a stop when they needed to against the Rams in week 3 as LA made its late game comeback. Obviously, we talk about the loss to the Arizona Cardinals at home. That was Kyler Murray and the Cardinals rushing offense really putting the hurt on the 49ers on that really hot day at Levi's Stadium. We fast forward all the way to this game against the Seahawks, where they couldn't stop Geno Smith in the fourth quarter. So what's the cause behind this? Because it obviously is different between offense and defense. The 49ers offense has been the better unit of this football team this year. Go to this graphic. You want to be further to the right. You want to be further up. The offense, it's, you could argue top 5, top 6 right here behind only Detroit, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Washington. This is all 4 quarters. The defense, though, there are a lot more teams in front of the 49ers defense. They're not in the upper right. They're barely above the x-axis. So on the aggregate, you definitely blame the 49ers defense more than the offense for this fourth quarter collapse. But then you got to talk about what's wrong with the defense. Obviously, they've got a new coordinator, Nick Sorensen. This is his first year doing it. I see huge problems for the 49ers in blitz inefficiency this year. They're ranked in the very bottom of the league in terms of what the EPA they generate from their defensive play is when they send extra men rushing. And you're not going to win in this league closing just rushing 4 unless you have a special pass rush. I don't think the 49ers pass rush with 4 is bad, but it definitely isn't sufficient when it doesn't have Nick Bosa. So in situations like that, you're going to have to bring a 5th man, maybe even a 6th man. And if your blitzes aren't confusing people, if your blitzes aren't overwhelming one side of the line of scrimmage and then overwhelming the QB, if you're just picking apart that blitz, it's going to be really tough to win. I don't think that Nick Sorensen has developed as a good blitzing defensive coordinator at this point. Late in November, early in December of the 2021 season, which was DeMeco Ryans' first season as the 49ers defensive coordinator, they really started to click when it came to the blitz. Now, they had a better defensive front then when you think about guys like Arden Key, Eric Armstead, who are no longer with the 49ers. Charles Omenihu came aboard in 2021 as well. So they had a fairly loaded defensive line. Their secondary was not nearly as good. They've got better cornerbacks this year, but DeMeco Ryans grew into a good blitzer. He even used K'Wan Williams a lot, the nickelback, to get after opposing quarterbacks. That was an early December game. They won in overtime at Cincinnati. Cincinnati would go on to win the AFC Championship. It was well-timed blitzes from K'Wan Williams, Fred Warner, DeMeco Ryans dialed those up to push the 49ers into overtime, and then Jimmy Garoppolo led them down the field to beat the Bengals. So I think that Nick Sorensen needs to develop into a better blitzer, because you don't close games out bringing just 4 rushers. You need to bring more, especially if Nick Bosa is not healthy or not available or both, as was the case to close the game last week. So that's one thing. Another thing is the run defense for the 49ers, and this is an underlying number. The defense obviously ranks number 28 overall in the fourth quarter. Well, I ran the numbers for the 49ers run defense specifically this year, and they're fascinating. The run defense goes number 3 overall in the first quarter. So that's obviously very good, but they fall off a cliff by the second quarter. 49ers have the number 22 run defense in the second quarter, the number 25 run defense in the third quarter, and the number 23 run defense in the fourth quarter. So the defense obviously erodes, but not as fast as the run defense. So the defense as a whole is staying afloat until the fourth quarter, because the 49ers pass defense actually stays in the top 7. That's where it is in the second and third quarters, until it falls down to the number 28 pass defense in the fourth quarter. So what does that tell us? Well, the 49ers pass defense holds on for longer than the run defense. The run defense is eroded by the second quarter. The pass defense keeps it together until the fourth, which is why I'm not keen on blaming Nick Sorensen for everything here. To me, it seems like he's scheming a decent pass defense, but they're just holding back. The flood waters are rising. And then finally the dam ruptures in the fourth quarter. And then you see it with the overall defensive statistics. I think that the fact that the run defense starts to struggle earlier in the game shows that the 49ers, at least as of right now, and I get it, Nick Bosa has been playing banged up, and obviously there have been other injuries there. No Yetur Gross-Matos for a while. I think that the 49ers may not have the horses run defense-wise. They've got to get this trade acquisition, Khalil Davis, integrated into the scheme, integrated into the defensive line. I think that's something that might help. But run defense-wise, they weren't good last year, and they've struggled this year. I know that Javon Hargrave also not with this team. I know that he wasn't the best run defender, but it was still a body up there that the 49ers could use to keep the rotation fresh. And quite frankly, they haven't been good enough when it comes to that run defense this year. It's not only the defensive linemen, too. We saw missed tackles in the past game against the Seattle Seahawks. There was one play where Kenneth Walker was able to shake off Yetur Gross-Matos, yes, a defensive lineman, but also shook off Diamara Lenore. So you've got to have your defensive backs and your linebackers tackling well in their opportunities. It is an all 11-man kind of thing, and the 49ers haven't been doing that well enough. Bottom line, though, is that the defense has been worse in the fourth quarter than the 49ers offense. And I do think that it is appropriate to divvy up responsibility, divvy up blame, however you want to say it in this regard, because there seemed to be disagreement about that in the 49ers locker room today. And I get it. Teammates are going to be good teammates. Fred Warner blaming the defense. He's blaming his own unit. Nick Bosa blaming his own unit. He said that the offense bailed the defense out so many times last year. The defense has to start doing the opposite this year. And then George Kittle turned around and blamed the offense. Football's a complicated sport. So in actuality, you need all three phases of the game. And I intentionally have not talked about special teams just yet because that would just distract us from the task at hand. And that's talking about offense and defense. But special teams has its role in this too. Special teams might have the largest role in this. Take a look at this. This is from, I just closed it actually. I got to open this again. This is going to be from SF Data 49ers. Talking about the 49ers special teams unit and just how poorly they have played this year. As soon as I could find this, we got to go back to SF Data Niners to get it. I accidentally closed out of it. They have a great account that really, really illustrates visually what the 49ers are dealing with. And here you go. So they've got, this is offense in the first column, defense in the second column, special teams in the third column. And then it adds all three together to give a net EPA per play score that combines the entire team. So green is good, red is bad. Number 6 on offense are the 49ers over here, right? 0.094. Number 12 on defense. So it's not as dark of a shade of green, but it's still in the upper half. Look how many points per play they have lost on special teams, this third column. They are dead last, number 32. A commenter pointed out to me that, and we can make this wider, that's great. A commenter pointed out to me that if the 49ers special teams was just average, if they were just at 0 or somewhere like where Kansas City is, they would actually have a sum over on the right side here that would be number 1 in the league. The 49ers would be the most efficient team in the NFL if the special teams weren't number 32, if it were just number 16. Hell, even if it were like number 20 or number 21, the special teams might be good enough to make the 49ers the most efficient team in the league. So that's just some food for thought for you. Like it's the special teams has been epically bad for San Francisco this year. And when you hear Nick Bosa and you hear, Kyle Shanahan even mentioned it today. George Kittle obviously talked about it. When you hear, oh yeah, we could be 8-2 if a few, 3 or 4 other plays broke in our favor. Well, a lot of the plays that aren't breaking in the 49ers' favor that have been particularly damaging for San Francisco have come in that third phase of the game on special teams. But yeah, to me, that's like beating a dead horse at this point. I've said the special teams needs to be better. They were a little bit better this past week against the Seahawks, but they still made some critical mistakes. They were able to dodge a bullet on one of them when Jordan Mason muffed the kickoff. But when the new punter, Pat O'Donnell, kicked it through the end zone, even though the Seahawks didn't even have a returner, that was a very damaging play. So special teams is special teams. If they can hold serve for the rest of the season, that's going to be great for the 49ers. But we all know how big of a problem it's been so far. If we just isolate offense and defense, that's when you get into this little tug of war, and that's where people start arguing, well, who's more to blame? Obviously, it's not going to be a binary answer. There are going to be units of blame that you can assign to each group, and it's also going to be connected. So better offense can also mean better defense. More time of possession means less time for the defense on the field. More takeaways mean that the offense is in better position. They could build momentum that way. So it's never going to be binary, but if we break it down on that per play basis, as I did, we do get some interesting numbers, and that is the 49ers offense performing better than the defense. I actually X'd out of the defense one too. So what I'll do is I'll put the full article up on the screen right here. This is going to be what I wrote on the San Francisco Standard. You can even check out our Q&A advertisement. We're running another one next Tuesday, November 26th at 11 after I get back from Green Bay. Guess what? I got a direct flight to Green Bay. Now that I'm on the flight, I could probably let you know about it. I fly United more. I try to fly United every single time that I fly just for my status. But Delta Airlines added a flight from San Jose, SJC, straight to Green Bay, like directly to Green Bay's airport. One flight each way. There's going to be one leaving on Saturday at noon. There's one leaving Green Bay on Monday at 11 a.m. back to San Jose. So I'm going to head all the way from the city down to San Jose just so I can fly to Green Bay. Those of you who have followed me for some time know that I've had some adventures when covering games in Green Bay. In fact, this channel first started blowing up back during the 2021 season playoff run, the Snow Globe game at Green Bay, where I was the last person in the stadium. I'm proud to say that. It was 3 a.m. And then I had to get back to Milwaukee for a flight that was at like 8 or 9 a.m. I was staying in Appleton, Wisconsin at a motel because they don't have many options out there to stay, especially when the Packers are playing because everything's filled up. A place that had been a Motel 6, but was being rebranded, so it didn't have any signs on it. It was turning into a roadway inn. That or the other way around. It was one of those places where the sink was in your room by the bed. Like it was like a cell. And needless to say, I didn't sleep in this place. I didn't want to sleep. I actually did a live. Surprisingly, they had decent enough Wi-Fi to do a live in the 2 hours or the hour and a half that I was in the room between something like 3:30 a.m. and 5 a.m. And then I said, I'm just going to go to Milwaukee's airport. I'm not going to sleep. But it was still like a 2-hour drive, and cars were like sliding off the road because it was negative 10 degrees. You got to remember. But everybody, I mean, I don't think you guys slept that night either because you're just watching these videos. We had like 2,000 people watching live simultaneously at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was great stuff for the channel. It was a memorable night in 49ers history, but it was also a logistical nightmare to get to and from Green Bay because flying to Green Bay was out of the question. So, flying to Milwaukee was still difficult, but had to do some layover activity to get there. And I was just like, oh God, how am I going to do it this time? It's not easy to get to Lambeau Field. And Delta Airlines added a direct flight from San Jose to Green Bay. So shout out to them. I'll be on it. I think Matt Barrows is going to be taking that flight as well. Been talking to him about that. So if you're still looking to get to Green Bay, just like all the 49ers fans are, I think there's a few more empty seats on the flight from San Jose to Green Bay. Delta Airlines should pay me for that. They're not paying me for that, which is unfortunate, but it happens. You know who is paying me is Public Rec. This is a good time to talk about Public Rec. Nice, seamless transition. Are you tired of squeezing into stiff dress pants at that holiday party? This season, unwrap the gift of comfort with the Game Changer pants from Public Rec. The office pants that look like Monday but feel like Sunday. And they sent me a pair, and they're awesome. They feel like really comfortable sweatpants, but they look like something that you would or could wear to work. Imagine clocking in while feeling as cozy as if you were still in bed, sipping hot cocoa. Those of you going to Green Bay might want to feel like that. It's going to be cold. With a soft hand feel and smooth drape, these pants are fan favorites for a reason. Whether you're closing deals in the boardroom, navigating holiday travel, or mingling at company parties, the Game Changers will keep you looking sharp and feeling great. Public Rec is the ultimate men's clothing brand for blending comfort and style seamlessly. And trust me, you won't be disappointed. So stop suffering in regular pants and give the gift of comfort this holiday season for a limited time only. Our listeners get 20% off when you use the code Lombardi at checkout. That's 20% off with the code Lombardi at publicrec.com. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. So please support our show and tell them that the Lombardi Lounge sent you. Give yourself or someone you love the gift of comfort this holiday. And I mentioned the Lombardi Lounge because we've got the podcast going with me and Margot, my wife, those of you who don't know. Second episode dropped on, I believe, Tuesday. It dropped on Tuesday. We recorded on Monday night. It was fun. We talked about a lot. It's up on the Lombardi Lounge. That is audio only. So those of you watching on YouTube and Twitter, X, as I like to call it now, you have to go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, type in the Lombardi Lounge. Make sure you're subscribed to the audio only product as well, because that's where the show with me and Margot is going to be weekly. It's been a lot of fun doing the first two. We got a lot of good feedback for that. So she talked about her time at the game on Sunday. We ran into a lot of people at the game on Sunday too. Some cool conversations. So make sure you are plugged in to that. Got a 49ers update today on Brock Purdy. Why don't I take it out to the practice field for you? Santa Clara, where Brock Purdy was not throwing at practice today. Limited participant due to the sore shoulder following the game against the Seattle Seahawks. Purdy was in the QB1 spot during warm-ups, but he only performed the footwork drills and handoffs without any throws involved. So obviously trying to rest that shoulder so it's in a better spot. We'll see what Brock Purdy is doing at practice tomorrow. I wouldn't read into this too far in either direction, just like I wouldn't read into Nick Bosa's absence from practice too far in either direction. Bosa himself in the locker room said that it's too early to make a judgment for Sunday. He hurt the oblique/hip on the opposite side against the Seattle Seahawks. That knocked Bosa out of the game. He says that he's a little bit more sore on that left side than he was at this point of the week last week on the right side. He didn't practice on Wednesday and Thursday last week since rest was the prescription for Nick Bosa, and rest is again the prescription for him this week. The 49ers have needed to add another defensive lineman to get through these practices without Bosa, so they re-signed Jonathan Garvin, who had been with the team a little bit earlier this season, to the practice squad. Garvin is a defensive end who actually used to play for the Green Bay Packers. He's participating in practice as I speak, and he will be with the 49ers through at least this week. But that doesn't point one way or the other with Nick Bosa. The plan had been to rest him just like they did last week, and we'll see how he's feeling on Sunday. That's obviously the big one to watch as the 49ers get ready for a massive, massive game against the Green Bay Packers. I can't emphasize this enough, but the probability swing between a win and a loss for the 49ers is massive. They're victorious in Green Bay, over a 50% chance to make the postseason. If they lose in Green Bay, the 49ers will have only about a 15% chance to make the postseason. George Kittle, this is good news. This helps the 49ers in their quest to beat Green Bay. He said today that he will for sure play against the Packers. So Kittle missed last week with the hamstring injury. He said that he didn't want to risk being shelved for 4 to 6 weeks if that hamstring was tenuous and he had pulled it running a route. He feels much better now, and he is absolutely 100% certain that he's going to play against Green Bay. 49ers obviously missed George Kittle's multi-dimensional presence a lot. I thought that Kyle Shanahan made a mistake by putting Jalen Moore, an offensive lineman, their swing tackle, in for 12 snaps at tight end to help replace Kittle. You don't replace George Kittle. He's a future Hall of Famer. And although Jalen Moore obviously is a good blocker, at least relative to other tight ends, he can't run out there and be a receiving threat. And I think that really compromised and limited the 49ers offense against Seattle. I think that Shanahan should have just leaned into his receiving core, played guys like Jacob Cowing more, just embraced the fact that the personnel didn't dictate as strong of a running game, and go out there and throw the ball a little bit more. Obviously, the 49ers did not do that, but this week they should not have to face that dilemma with George Kittle saying that he's for sure going to be back. No Trent Williams, no Christian McCaffrey at practice today, but that was expected. Williams dealing with the ankle. McCaffrey is coming back from the Achilles, so both of them had pre-planned rest days. In the case of somebody like Trent Williams, who is still dealing with an ongoing injury, that's a decision, just like Nick Bosa's, that may not come until Sunday, may not come until the day of the game in Green Bay. Charvarius Ward back in the building for the 49ers. Charvarius was on bereavement leave following the tragic death of his 1-year-old daughter, Amani Joy. 49ers welcome him back. He was a limited participant. They're going to see where he's at. The no-rush philosophy here continues, as it should for San Francisco. They're going to see how Charvarius is feeling and performing this week before deciding what kind of role he's going to have against the Packers. No Tatum Bethune, the rookie linebacker, sprained his MCL against the Seahawks, so he's going to be out for a few weeks for the 49ers. And still no Kevin Givens. That groin injury has proven to be troublesome for Kevin Givens. They expected him back sooner, but still not back. Last I saw him was Friday when he was doing some work on the side for San Francisco. Today, Kyle Shanahan made a few good points that we can delve further into with the lives tonight. We'll see how many times I broadcast tonight, so be ready for that. But he said, Brock Purdy's playing at the same exact level as he did in 2022 and 2023. The team around him is just worse. That might break the brains of people who don't understand that this is a team sport, but I think it's true. I would even offer that maybe Brock Purdy is playing better this season than he has in previous seasons. He's throwing the downfield deep pass with more regularity and with more accuracy, although that's not been a part of the 49ers offense over the past 2 weeks. He's scrambling much more effectively than he did in the past. But, this is something I asked George Kittle. This is something that I've wondered for a while now, and I wrote a lot about it a couple weeks ago, and the 49ers seem to, very temporarily get out of the rut. They've thrown the fewest screen passes in the NFL this season. Like, they are dead last in screen passes. Purdy threw the 6th most last year. Kyle Shanahan today said that it's because defenses are gearing up against the screen because the 49ers have been so good at it lately. I asked George Kittle about this very same issue, and he didn't have as clear of an answer. He said that the 49ers still have the screen passes in their playbook, but they just haven't gone to them. He added that he'd rather the 49ers just run the ball, but George Kittle loves when the 49ers run the ball because he loves the block. This is something to keep an eye out for. I just think that San Francisco, they're dead last in yak. They were number 1 in yak last year. The screen passes are on the other end of the spectrum too. I just don't think that they've implemented the gimmies as effectively as they have in the past, which has led to a higher variance offense, and a higher variance offense is not going to be as consistent. And, when you do lack consistency, then sometimes you can struggle to close out games, even if the overall efficiency rankings are solid, which they still are for the 49ers. This is still an offense in the top 5 of DVOA. But obviously, the games have turned into losses, these close ones, especially the ones against the NFC West rivals. Nick Bosa today at his locker echoed what Kyle Shanahan said at his press conference, that the 49ers are a few plays away from being 8-2 instead of 5-5. And that's true, and it mirrors what the efficiency ranking says, but they still have to deliver the plays to actually secure those victories. And that's what the NFL comes down to. That being said, the 49ers are not incorrect when they say that they've been very close, and that's definitely worth something. That shows that they've got the ability to win these games against good opponents moving forward, which is what they're going to have to do since the Packers and the Bills are coming up next on the schedule. So they're hanging on to the fact that they've been really damn close to winning these games, combined with the fact that they have used this roster core to go really, really far over the past several seasons. They're using that as belief entering this game against Green Bay. That's how the team is strategizing. That's how the team is circling the wagons heading into such an important game at Lambeau Field, where
37% of the crowd is expected to be 49ers fans by Vivid Seats. I think that's absolutely remarkable. The 49ers fan takeovers, I'm not surprised when it happens in Tampa Bay, even though that's far away from the Bay Area. But when it happens in Green Bay, that's a place that prides itself on filling up the stadium with Packer fans. That's a nod to 49ers fans. Now we'll see if the 49ers will reward a fan base that travels exceptionally well. They've got a huge game coming up in Green Bay. There's your update. Much more coming soon. Follow along. We'll talk to you in a bit.
Yeah, no. I promised that much more would be coming soon. It indeed is coming soon. We had the 49ers update on Brock Purdy and company from Levi's Stadium. As I mentioned, Purdy did not throw today, so I think tomorrow is going to be a much better indicator of what's going on with Brock Purdy and that shoulder soreness. Kyle Shanahan said that he didn't think it was, well, what he did say is he wasn't overly concerned that it would impact Brock Purdy's availability come Sunday against Green Bay. That obviously would be a huge deal if Brock Purdy couldn't play, but we can't make premature judgments based on just one practice here. Shoulder soreness from Sunday prevented Brock Purdy from throwing today. That said, interesting stuff from Kyle Shanahan. I think that when you look at this 49ers offense this year, there are so many bizarre splits that we hadn't dealt with before in covering this 49ers offense. I've been talking about this since like week 3 or week 4, and I was waiting too for a bigger sample to materialize to make sure that the offense actually was on the track of delivering some of these splits. But now they're clear. They're still last in the league in yards after the catch, which is crazy because they were number 1 in the league last season. They are last in the league in terms of screen passes. They've thrown the fewest screens. They threw the 7th most last season. They're throwing, and this has changed over the past 2 weeks. They've been going shorter passes now. But over the course of the entire season, the average depth of target for Brock Purdy has been near the top of the league, where it was middle of the pack last season, but another big stylistic shift for the 49ers. I mean, all this is happening against the bigger backdrop of the offense, still ranking number 2 in yards per play, but number 10 in points per drive. So there's a big disconnect between the yards per play and the points per drive. Somewhere they're leaving some meat on the bone. And when we look further into it, where are they leaving meat on the bone? Well, we see that the yak numbers aren't as good, and a lot of the other stylistic numbers are very different than they were last year. My personal theory is that losing Christian McCaffrey was a shock to the system of the 49ers coaching staff. The separation numbers are also the lowest in the league this year, the average separation at the time of catch. And that was like number 12 or number 13 last year. So they were getting a full half yard more of separation last season. Now that's also something that's dependent on where the quarterback is throwing the ball because it's at the time of catch. It's all connected. Brock Purdy is part of this whole calculus. I just think that things are so markedly different this year that a simple, this is how defenses are playing us, isn't enough of an explanation for why the stylistic tendencies of this offense have changed so drastically. I think it's a combination of the 49ers getting very specific defensive game plans tailored against them, plus these defensive game plans being tailored against very, very specific 49ers tendencies, such as screen passes. That's why they're down in screen passes, or a lot of that reason, combined with the fact that Christian McCaffrey was not available for the first 2 months of the year unexpectedly. And the 49ers were getting ready to ramp him up for week 1, and they were ramping him up for week 1, and then he was ruled out the day of that Monday Night Football game against the New York Jets. So what happened is the 49ers obviously changed gears without McCaffrey. They don't trust somebody like Jordan Mason nearly as much as a receiver out of the backfield. Other defenses, opposing defenses, were already taking aim at the 49ers yak game. They were trying to stop those shorter screens and those passes that generate the yards after the catch. The 49ers seem to abandon it entirely without McCaffrey. And maybe that's why Kyle Shanahan, I've talked about it a lot the past few days, doesn't seem to have his fastball right now, even with McCaffrey back. 49ers have been thrown all out of sorts when it comes to how they normally schematically attack opposing defenses. And even with the centerpiece of the weaponry back, they haven't seemed to get back into the rhythm and back into the stylistic nature that we saw in years prior. Now, there has been a shift over the past 2 games in that they're not just throwing it deep all the time anymore. In fact, Brock Purdy didn't attempt a single pass over 20 yards downfield against the Seahawks, even though he had been attempting a lot of those passes earlier in the year. So obviously there's another shift back. The Seahawks were playing a lot of too high defense to take away those longer Purdy throws. But if you watch the tape, and Greg Cosell said this on KMBR, there were a lot of throws that supposedly he didn't go for that he probably should have gone for over that intermediate to deeper middle of the field. So things are a little bit discombobulated for the 49ers offensively right now. I think that that's clear to see. Whenever you score only 17 against the team that you scored 36 against a month earlier, the Seattle Seahawks, it's probably more than one problem at play for the 49ers. But the fact that they scored 36 against Seattle without Christian McCaffrey this year, and the fact that we can all agree that Christian McCaffrey is one of the best players in football, means they've got a lot of offensive potential moving forward. And it's going to be interesting to see how San Francisco irons all this out. Very important to note that it is dependent on the health of Brock Purdy. All right, that's enough for tonight. Well, besides a couple other stats, got a little bit more for you. Ready? Put up on the screen. We got rushing efficiency this year. SF Data Niners is doing some great work. This is the 49ers rushing efficiency. As you can see, they're not getting particularly productive play from their running backs. Even Jordan Mason, who's got over 700 yards on the season, the EPA per rush has not been awesome. It's been middling, 54.7 percentile for Jordan Mason and negative EPA per rush. McCaffrey, right about the same, although the sample for Christian McCaffrey still much smaller in that point. They're running to the left much more often. You can see the most common run direction. Mason to the left, McCaffrey to the left 15 times, Mason to the left 56 times. So they like to run a little bit more to the left, even though the right side of the 49ers offensive line has actually been significantly better this season, thanks in large part to this guy, Dominic Pooney. This is more SF Data 49ers stuff. You've got X-axis run block percentile and Y-axis pass block percentile. So you want to be further to the right and further up. These are rookie interior offensive linemen over the years. You can see that they're all over the place in terms of where they rate. Dominic Pooney is where you want to be, in the upper right corner for the 49ers. That's made the right side stronger. Colton McKivitz has gotten better this year too. I would say that the 2 weakest spots of the 49ers offensive line are actually center, Jake Brendel, and the left guard, Aaron Banks, so far this season. So just a little cool data for you all to chew on after a show full of data. And if you want to read more about it, then just go to the link in the description. This is my article up on the San Francisco Standard. Tim and I have that Q&A coming up next Tuesday. How are the Warriors doing right now, by the way? They were up big on the Hawks. People probably, well, I'm guessing people aren't watching anymore because they're still up big on the Hawks. About 21 points, 108-87 with 4 minutes left to play. So that's a team that's been able to turn it around following a down year. The Warriors, what are they going to be? Like 11-3, 12-3? They lost to the Clippers the other night, but they get a win tonight. This was fun. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Check out the article on the San Francisco Standard. We'll have much more for you tomorrow. Bye now.